Hello, I'm Stephen Alltop, music director and conductor of the Champaign-Urbana Symphony Orchestra. And it's my pleasure to share a few thoughts with you about our upcoming concert on Saturday, February 10th. This is going to be a very celebratory program, and it includes the final symphony of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, number 41. Mozart seemed to write his last three symphonies as a set, 39, 40, and 41. And there's a lot of conjecture as to why he wrote these symphonies, possibly for a tour. There's no concrete evidence as to why he did, but what is known for certain is that they represent the pinnacle of his achievement in this genre, particularly the Symphony number 41 in C major. It begins right away with energetic music, dim, da-da-dum, da-da-dum, and contrasts the sort of majestic music with more lyrical thoughts, as Mozart so often does, the great interplay and contrast in his music. The second movement is a beautiful slow movement. The third movement, a rousing minuet in the Austrian fashion. And then it's the final movement that has a seemingly simple theme, one that appears in other works by Mozart, in fact. And that theme gets exchanged and transformed and developed, and finally at the end of the work, tossed about the orchestra in this just exultation of contrapuntal genius. It's amazing what Mozart does with this music. I mean, there's no doubt that he was one of the greatest minds to ever walk this planet. But in this final movement, he goes to a whole other level. And I think hearing this music live is a fantastic thing, much more so than just hearing it on a recording. When you see the musicians making it and the way they involve themselves in Mozart's genius in music, it's just fantastic. The second half of the program features music of Anton Bruckner, including his magnificent Te Deum for full orchestra, full chorus, and soloists. Te Deums were usually done for times of celebration or gratitude, say the end of a war, the end of a famine, a wedding, some other great event. And they're always sort of celebratory in nature. Well, Bruckner's is that, but in a sort of big-shouldered way, in the manner that we expect from his symphonic music. Bruckner was a great organist and had these sort of large-scale conceptions of sound. And the piece opens in this really declamatory fashion. It's actually cast in 5 sections. The second and fourth sections are a little slower and feature the solo quartet in dialogue with the choir. And it's the outer sections that are the really exultant ones. We're being joined on this concert by the Oratorio Society of the University of Illinois, with their director, Andrea Sciolia, and a guest choral preparer, Kathy Romy, who has had a long and distinguished career. So it should be a wonderful collaboration with those singing artists, who will also bring us 2 motets by Anton Bruckner, 2 a cappella works that are just as beautiful as they could be, and also quite reflective of Bruckner's deep faith. The second half of the concert begins with another celebratory piece, and one you might not know, the Festival March by Antonin Dvorak. And so much of Dvorak's music is well known, not as much this piece, but it very much lives up to its title as a really festive work and will add to the celebratory feel of this concert. When I was thinking about the best way to start this program, I thought of the music of my longtime friend Michael Abels and his orchestral work called Outburst, which is for a large orchestra and just a terrific concert opener. I've known Michael since we were high school students in Phoenix, Arizona, and I began performing his music very shortly after I met him in high school. What a joy it's been to watch his career develop and even skyrocket in the last few years. He's been writing film music for some of the most notable directors of our time, and last year won the Pulitzer Prize in Music for his collaborative opera, Omar, that he did with Rihanna Giddens. Omar is sweeping the opera world and will soon be done here in Chicago. Michael was kind enough to take time from his very demanding schedule to chat with me from his home in Los Angeles about Outburst, the piece that will be on our concert, and his career and his viewpoints about composition and writing music in general. I hope you'll take time to watch the rest of this video and get to know Michael and make a new musical friend, as he has been mine for many, many years. We'll hope to see you for this exciting concert on Saturday, February 10th in the Follinger Great Hall at the Cranach Center at 7:30 p.m. And you can go to cusymphony.org for tickets and more information. Well, Michael Abels, thank you so much for taking this time to chat about Outburst and the wonderful and exciting career that you are having. I assume you're out there in Los Angeles?
I am, and thanks for talking with me. It's great to see you, Stephen.
Great to see you too. We do go back a ways, don't we?
We go back a ways, so it's great to see
Yeah.
you again.
Yes, and back to the good old days of high school in Phoenix, Arizona, and making our early steps in the musical world.
The
So,
earlier, yes.
yes, indeed. So maybe you could just start by saying a word about Outburst. Of course, our program shares the circumstances and the people for whom you wrote it. It's a very exuberant and jubilant piece, but I'd love to hear what you have to say about it.
It's a exuberant and jubilant. um, you've really nailed exactly what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a wonderful concert opener
Hmm.
uh, that gives the orchestra a chance to showcase its, particularly the brass section, uh,
Hmm.
and it's kind of a piece of musical fireworks, but the joyful kind of fireworks. Not
Yes. But you've always loved sort of kinetic energy in your music, haven't you?
I feel like I have. Um I really love writing music that musicians enjoy playing. It's
Yeah.
extremely important to me that a musician gets the experience of joy, and I don't mean happiness in a surface way. I mean, and playing music together should be an affirmation of, yes, this is why I've studied so long, to be
Hmm.
able to experience this magical thing that is making music together. And while I can't guarantee that everyone's individual part will be the most amazing thing they've ever played, I definitely want everyone to feel like they're contributing to a thing that is larger than themselves. And I think that all the music I write for orchestra, whether no matter the emotional path of the music or the genre or whatever the music's about, I think that it, in some way, honors the fact that playing music together is really a miraculous, joyful, amazing thing.
Absolutely. And just the energy of seeing people make that music and the way they invest themselves. And in a piece like Outburst, there's a lot of physical energy that goes in to making it, and that gets sent out into the house and into the ears and souls of our audience. And so it's really a wonderful piece to start a concert, I think.
Thank you. I'm so, even though I'm a pianist and I studied for many years, I'm not nearly as good a performer as any of the people that on your stage. My 14-year-old self would be extremely angry at hearing me play the piano at this point. And, but I'm like an architect of, I make blueprints of what music would sound like if you were going to make music, and the idea for me is to give that away to people who do that and give them an opportunity to do what they do well. And then I just feel very grateful that I was able to participate in this way that you don't see but that you hear as part of the experience of making a piece of music.
I think that you succeed in that, having had the privilege of doing a number of your pieces over the years and being right at the center, if you will, of that process of how musicians absorb your music and then the audience. I think you really are able to achieve that so that everybody involved just really enjoys it, no matter what the style of the piece is. And of course, we're looking forward to doing more because you're always writing more, aren't you?
Well, I'm trying to. Lots of times there's a deadline that is requiring me to do that, so that helps.
Well, and you
Um,
do so much work in the film realm, and there the deadlines I think are probably particularly daunting, aren't they?
Yes, it can be. The music, in spite of being a wonderful, um, the wonderful, amazing, magical art that it is only one component of an even larger art that is done in a way that is very much a business, because you
Yes.
cannot employ that many people without it being very much a business. And so it's important that not only that your music tell the story, tell the character story in the way that the director wants, but also that you do it in a way that keeps that whole business machine running. And
Yeah.
that means you have to do what you say you're going to do by when you said you were going to do it, right? As we do in all of our businesses in which we relate with other people, and that's equally as important as the work itself.
Absolutely. Well, having known you for so long, I think I know what the answer to this question will be, but now you're at a point where you're just so in demand, and I'd love to touch base on some of your wonderful recent successes. But do you ever lose the feeling of like gratitude for where you are? You don't ever really take it for granted, even as successful as you are now.
Well, I mean, I'm a human being and I can feel cranky and feel just as cranky as anybody else on certain days. But then when I remind myself of often I find that if I say my problems out loud and I hear myself, that I'm just so shocked at how lucky I am that that if I do start feeling like I'm having a bad day, that I just realize that I spent a long time to have bad days that resemble the types of bad days that I have, and that I could just choose to snap TF out of it right now. Because there are a lot of people who would love to have my problems. They'd be happy to take my place the minute I decide that I don't want to have them anymore.
That's a good
So,
perspective.
yeah, so that then I have a little humble pie, and then I see if I can't live up to the potential that I have been offered.
Absolutely. So, one of your big recent successes was your opera,
Yes, thank you.
Omar, and it was great to observe the attention that was getting. I haven't had the pleasure of seeing it or hearing it myself yet, but it was premiered in Los Angeles, correct?
It was actually premiered at the Spoleto USA Festival in
Oh,
Charlotte
okay.
in
But it's been
May.
done in the West Coast?
Yes, then it went. It we were so it's a collaboration. It's a co-composed with Rhiannon Giddens,
Yes.
who asked me to collaborate with her, and she is an amazing, wonderful, multifaceted artist. One of the most talented people I've ever had the privilege of meeting, let alone working with. So we are the opera. We there were ended up being, I think, six co-commissioners, and so the opera is still enjoying its run of at the various presenters that co-commissioned it. And so it began at Spoleto USA Festival, and then it went to Los Angeles Opera and Boston Lyric Opera, and there's also the North University of North Carolina Performing Arts,
Hmm.
and that opens at San Francisco Opera this November.
That's
And
fantastic.
thank you. And Chicago Lyric Opera Chicago is also a uh, was a co-commissioner. So
So it will
I
appear here too.
I think sooner or later it will show up at Lyric Opera, and I'm super looking forward to that as well.
That is what I was hoping to hear, because that probably means you'll end up in Chicago and we'll bump into each other there, which would be very exciting. So, and on the film side, what have your recent projects been?
Let's see. Just recently there's one called Landscape with Invisible Hand, which is right. It's in that as we record this, it's at that space between theaters and streaming.
Hmm.
So maybe by the time people see this, they may be able to find it. But it's a wonderfully dark comedy about the aliens having landed, and it's not what you expect. And I don't know if I can say more about that, but it's
I heard a wonderful review of that movie. I'm trying
mm,
to remember who's the actor who plays the protagonist.
uh, the well, Tiffany Haddish is in it. She's the
Mhm.
biggest name, but the young the teenager, the high school student who's I think the lead, it's played by Asante Black. who's a wonderful young actor, and he um, anyway, so that I did the score for that. It's my second with that director Corey Finley, who did Bad Education with Hugh Jackman and Allison Janney, that was on HBO a couple years ago. And then I have another one coming coming in October, to called The Burial, with Jamie Foxx and Tommy Lee Jones.
Oh,
And
how marvelous.
right, and they're both amazing. They're both just so good, and the story is so interesting. I just, I mean, I you expect people to talk about projects enthusiastically, but I feel like a fan when I say like that, like, you know, projects that are just so interesting that I just feel so lucky to work on. The story is amazing. It's also got Journey Smollett, and
Hmm.
she's just luminous in her role, and so those are a couple of things.
Well, I know that people watching this will be looking out for both of those, and Omar as well. So that's really exciting. I promise not to take too much of your time because you have always so much music to write. But perhaps you could just say a word about how you feel you have grown with your craft, your understanding writing for different instruments, just how that process evolves for you.
Oh wow. Well, I think that you I hope I never stop developing my craft. I like to think that I have learned over my career. I'm always, whenever I'm with an orchestra or, you know, a recording session or something, I try to learn something about the music or and the instrument or a player's approach every time I have that opportunity. And I've had more opportunity than some people, but not nearly as much as others. And so I just always think, what can I learn today about this? And whenever you like, whenever, for example, when there's an issue with something in the score, you always have to wonder, well, is this the player not playing something correctly, or could this have been notated in a different way that where we wouldn't even need to have this conversation, you know? And so approaching it from a position of what can I learn here is something that I've always adopted and will always take with me. Another thing is I'm very much less, the deadlines I've faced have made me experience far less writer's block than I used to. um,
That's good.
yeah, it's really good because it helped me identify you know, what that is, which is really it's your ego getting in the way of your idea, is what it is. And uh, that's the opposite of what you want to happen. And it's funny to think that if you describe it as what that is, you realize, well, no, that's not what I want to be about. That's crazy. Why would I do that? And so one really has to, at least what I find when you have writer's block, is you have to identify what it is that you're refusing to do that is not letting the idea manifest.
Very
And
interesting.
it's always hard when we identify that we ourselves are in fact the problem. but, but
Like
that's
we so
invariably
often
true,
are.
right? But it's invariably true in that situation. And now I'm, for better or worse, much more aware of it. So, but the good side of it is that I hope I can be more efficient and effective in allowing the music to happen and getting out of my own way.
Great. Well, the last thing I'll ask, I was mentioning some of the composers whose music you'll be heard alongside in the programs that I'll conduct Outburst on this season, such as Mozart and Bruckner and Strauss and Elgar and others. I was just curious, what composers do you turn to for inspiration?
You know, it's this answer always comes out differently. I think it's because being a composer, I realize what it takes to construct a piece that's worthy of repeat listenings.
Hmm.
And any composer that has achieved that, I have to be in awe of how they achieved that, even if it's a very different way than I would have done it.
Hmm.
Because I think when you are listening to everyone's a critic of everything, including things that we would be terrible at doing ourselves.
Yes.
but but I think when, as a composer, if I'm going to criticize music, the implication is that I could have done it better. Like I would have a solution for this thing that I cite as a problem. And
Right.
so I hope that gives me some humility. So anyway, to answer your question, um, I I love Prokofiev, I love Stravinsky, I love Bernstein, and I I I I love Wagner, but then I also love Britten, and these some of these composers aren't this. I love Tchaikovsky.
Mhm.
I love Steve Reich. So,
Mhm.
many of these composers people wouldn't think of as being in the same genre, but to me they have a thing in common. It's just their music is just there's a way it's transcendent in its way.
They all represent success in different languages.
They do, but it's not even just I don't know. Success to me implies a sort of I
Well,
don't know.
they all represent I should say musical achievement. In
Yeah, there's an execution of an aesthetic. The
Mhm.
way the aesthetic is followed through on is just so strong and so satisfying when you buy into what the aesthetic is,
Yes.
if that makes sense. So that's a wonky way of saying successful, but yeah, very successful. And I'm hugely in awe of any music that achieves that.
That's really wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking this time to chat about Outburst and your very exciting career. And I think even more people now will be following you and tracking your future endeavors.
Well, Stephen, thanks for this time and thank you for playing Outburst.